If you're looking for a serious set of auxiliary lights for your off-road rig, the ARB Intensity IQ and the Colight SharkX are two lights that take very different approaches. One is built around adjustability, beam control, and a pretty sophisticated lighting system, while the other goes after raw output, a huge 9-inch footprint, and a much more aggressive look. And honestly, that makes this comparison pretty interesting because we're not just looking at which one is brighter. We're looking at which one actually gives us more usable light, which one makes more sense for different types of driving, and most importantly, whether the ARB is worth spending significantly more money on. So let's put these two side by side and see which one makes more sense for your rig. Starting with the physical design, both of these lights are built for off-road use, but they definitely have different personalities. The ARB Intensity IQ has that more refined, purpose-built look we normally expect from ARB. The housing is built around a durable aluminum body with a polycarbonate lens, heavy-duty mounting hardware, and an IP68 rating for dust and water protection. It also has a cooling-focused mounting bracket that adds some mass around the light while helping with heat management. The Colight SharkX goes in a slightly different direction. These are big 9-inch lights with a die-cast aluminum housing, deep cooling fins across the back, and the clean screwless front bezel. That screwless face actually gives the SharkX a pretty modern look, and on a larger truck or SUV, that 9-inch size gives the front end a much more aggressive, car-style appearance. So when it comes to build, we'd give ARB the edge for the more proven, engineered package. But the SharkX is certainly not trying to look or feel like a cheap little pod light either. This is where the ARB really starts separating itself. Instead of giving us one fixed beam pattern, the Intensity IQ uses 4 different optics: Super Spot, Spot, Flood, and Mid-Range. That means we can change how the light behaves depending on where we're driving. We can go narrow and long when we need distance, or open things up when we're crawling through trails where seeing the sides of the vehicle matters more. And the two lights can even be configured differently, so one can focus more on distance while the other handles the surrounding area. The SharkX is much simpler. We get a high beam and a low beam, along with white and amber DRL functions. That simplicity is actually part of the appeal, because there's less to think about. Flip the switch and you get a huge amount of light. But if we're comparing flexibility, ARB clearly wins here. The SharkX gives us different output levels, while the ARB lets us fundamentally change the way the light is distributed. And that difference matters more than it might sound. If we're cruising down a fast dirt road, we want distance. If we're crawling through tight woods, we want more foreground and side coverage. The ARB lets us adapt to both situations without changing the lights themselves. Now, this is where the SharkX fights back pretty hard. The supplied specifications claim up to 11,300 lumens on high beam and 6,200 lumens on low beam. And in real-world testing, the lights were described as producing a very wide, saturated field of illumination. Even the low setting was a substantial improvement over the vehicle's stock headlights. The ARB approaches output differently. Instead of simply chasing the biggest lumen number, ARB publishes its 1 lux distance figures for the different configurations. With the Intensity IQ pair, the max spot setting reaches 4,429 feet at 1 lux, while max flood reaches 2,953 feet and spreads up to 164 feet to each side. So we wouldn't call this a simple ARB is brighter or Colight at more lumens situation. The real difference is how that light is being used. The SharkX gives us a ton of light in a broad, powerful package, while the ARB gives us much more control over where that light goes. And for off-road driving, that can be just as important as the number printed on the box. This is another big difference between the two. The ARB Intensity IQ comes with a dedicated control system with multiple preset positions, and we can also customize the lighting through a smartphone app or ARB links. The system has 8 preset light output options, so we can cycle through different combinations without having to constantly mess with the settings. The SharkX keeps things much simpler. We have the high beam, low beam, and the DRL functions with a wiring harness and switch designed to keep the installation straightforward. And honestly, we like that approach if all we want is a powerful auxiliary light that we can turn on and forget about. But if we're actually changing our lighting depending on the trail, the ARB is on another level. We can have a wide flood setup for slower technical trails, then switch into a combination pattern when we pick up speed. That's the kind of feature we're more likely to appreciate after spending a few nights actually using the lights rather than just looking at the specs. Now, if appearance is part of the equation, the SharkX has something the ARB doesn't really compete with in the same way. The SharkX includes white and amber DRLs with a sequential startup effect, and that amber running light looks seriously good on an off-road build. The ARB is much more focused on being a driving light first. It has courtesy and work light functionality, but the SharkX definitely puts more emphasis on the visual side of the build. So if we want our auxiliary lights to add some personality even when we're not blasting down a trail at midnight, the SharkX gets the advantage here. The SharkX's biggest strength can also be its biggest problem. These are 9-inch lights, and they're huge. On a full-size truck, SUV, or serious overland build, that can look fantastic, but on a smaller bumper, they can start looking a little oversized. The ARB Intensity IQ is also a substantial light, measuring about 8.7 by 8.5 by 5.6 inches, and weighing around 8.4 pounds for the pair according to the supplied specifications. The SharkX is similarly aimed at larger auxiliary light installations, so neither of these is exactly a lightweight little pod we're gonna forget is sitting on the bumper. For installation, the SharkX has the advantage in simplicity. The harness is straightforward, while the ARB system has more hardware and electronics because there's simply more going on behind the scenes. If we're comfortable spending a little more time on the installation, that extra complexity buys us a lot more control. And this is really where the comparison comes down to how we use our rigs. If our priority is maximum flexibility and we want one set of lights that can handle everything from slow technical trails to high-speed night driving, the ARB Intensity IQ is the more capable system. We can change the beam pattern, adjust the intensity, use different presets, and tailor the lights around the type of terrain we're driving. ARB currently lists the Intensity IQ pair at $1,995.95 on US dollars, so there's no question that we're paying for that level of engineering and control. The Colight SharkX makes a much different argument. We're getting a massive 9-inch housing, a ton of claimed light output, useful low and high settings, good foreground coverage, and those amber and white DRLs all wrapped into a much simpler package. If we mainly want to dramatically improve nighttime visibility without getting deep into complicated lighting controls, the SharkX is the easier value proposition. So, which one is actually worth our money? For us, it really depends on what we're asking the lights to do. If we're building a serious off-road or overland rig and we want maximum control over our lighting, the ARB Intensity IQ is the one we'd choose. The ability to switch between spot, super spot, flood, and mid-range gives us a level of flexibility the SharkX simply doesn't have, and that becomes more valuable the more varied our driving conditions are. The Colight SharkX makes a much different argument. We're getting a massive 9-inch housing, a ton of claimed light output, useful low and high settings, good foreground coverage, and those amber and white DRLs all wrapped into a much simpler package. If we mainly want to dramatically improve nighttime visibility without getting deep into complicated lighting controls, the SharkX is the easier value proposition. So basically, the ARB is the smarter choice for someone who wants a lighting system they can fine-tune around the trail, while the SharkX makes more sense for someone who wants big light, big presence, and strong performance without paying ARB level money. And honestly, that's what makes this comparison interesting. Neither one is a bad choice, they're just built for two very different types of off-roaders.